The following episode will contain spoilers. You have been warned.
You're listening to Cinema IRL, the podcast that throws you into the movie and asks the question, what would you do? Man, there are just some of those jobs, am I right? Maintaining a pipeline at the bottom of the ocean sucks, but someone has to do it. Unfortunately, as Amber and Scott found out after watching Last Breath, there is a reason it sucks. And now, Cinema IRL.
I wish I could switch places for just one day.
What would you do?
Put yourself in my shoes.
How do we handle this?
What would you do?
Put yourself in my position.
What would you do?
Now it's your turn.
I'd like jobs I'm not taking for 1,000, Alex.
Yeah, this was definitely one of those kinds of jobs, wasn't it?
Like, what's the recruitment on that one? Dear Lord.
I don't know. You have to be almost like a good engineer and then also a good diver, which don't seem like two talents that would necessarily go together for most people.
I mean to actually research, like, what profession has the highest death rate.
Yeah, because they said this one did.
I mean, it said it was very dangerous.
It said it was the number one most dangerous job.
I don't know. There are some places that you have to replace some light bulbs that are really, really high that actually are pretty dangerous.
That's true. So this episode, we are talking about Last Breath. It is a film that follows seasoned deep-sea divers as they battle the raging elements to rescue their crewmate trapped hundreds of feet beneath the Earth's surface, or beneath the ocean surface. And basically what these divers did is they went down and they maintained the 20,000 miles of pipeline that is laying at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, that's...
You talk about jobs you didn't even know existed. I couldn't help but to think, where were these recruiters at my high school job fair? Because there are so many jobs that I think anyone would love to do or love to pursue, and they just don't know these jobs exist. Not to say that this is it specifically, like saying I want to go deep into the ocean and repair pipes, but there's so many jobs out there that I think people don't know about.
Hallmark greeting card writer.
That I would love that job.
Yeah, it's probably less dangerous too.
Yeah, and then of course it reminds me of 500 Days of Summer because that was Joseph Gordon-Levitt's job as he wrote at a greeting card company. So yeah, Last Breath. It is Last Breath because basically our character Chris gets stuck down at the ocean's floor when the tanker ship that they're on stops in the middle of this horrendous storm. Horrendous. Did I just make up a word? Horrendous.
Horatio?
Yeah, I made up a word. Horrendous and...
Was that like something like...
No.
Related to Horatio?
No.
Horatio?
Horrendous and racial. Anyway, sorry, folks. Having a senior moment
Someone
there.
Urban Dictionary that for us. Horatio.
So there's this horrible storm, and then they're like, this is where we got to stop. Send down the divers. And then, of course, the ship gets tossed around. So the bell, which is the apparatus that they lower down into, gets pushed around, which means the divers and their umbilical cords get pushed around. And Chris's cord snaps, and he is underwater now, not attached to anything or anyone in this torrential storm that they're having, and has 10 minutes worth of air.
Yeah, so here at Cinema IRL, we normally like to ask the question, what would you do?
I would not accept this job.
Today, I'd like to ask the question, why the fuck did they?
I have to think that job pays an insane amount of money. And
Let's start with, why are you doing this at night in the middle of a storm?
Yeah, I was thinking that obviously, I don't know what year this was supposed to be. This is based on a true story, and they actually did show us footage of the real Chris at the end. So I don't know what year this is, but it seems like there should be some sort of forecasting to know that, hey, there's a storm out where we need to head. Maybe we don't go now. And even if, because it also seemed preventative. Not like, hey, there's a massive leak right now. It's like, hey, we need to make sure that this is fixed so people have gas.
We're just gonna hang out here until the storm is done.
Yeah, but it was tossing them all over the place. It was incredibly violent, and then these guys are supposed to go underwater and work, which is fine if underground can sometimes, or underwater when you go deep down, can still be perfectly still, even though the top of the ocean isn't. But boy, if your lifeline is that ship and it's getting tossed all around like the Titanic, you've got problems.
Yeah, especially if all your
Torrential and horrific is what I was combining.
Horatio.
Yeah, torrential
Yeah, and horrific.
and horrific. That's what I was doing.
I know what you're putting. Yeah, so for one, let's have everything be calm. Number two, I couldn't help but think when they got the little camera drone thing that could see it
Underwater, yeah.
Yeah, like maybe you need to work on your claw game, like claw machines.
Yeah, the underwater drone, which has a flashlight and it goes to look underwater, see what's happening, and it also has a claw on it, which is basically to be a dead body retriever. And so I don't think it needs to be terribly refined because usually they're just grabbing at someone who passed. But in this case, they had reason to believe that it was possible that Chris was still alive, even though he had used up his 10 minutes of oxygen. And we were now at that point, maybe at around the 20-minute mark
We're
where
gonna
he
get to
had
that.
had it.
We're gonna get to that.
Okay, well, go ahead. What you got?
So,
Hello? Dead air. We have dead air.
well, we don't have dead air after I edit it.
Okay.
So the guy who was supposed to run the claw machine, and he's like, I don't want to be responsible. Shut up. It's your job. We didn't ask you to think. We asked you to take orders. Do as you are told.
Okay. Well, number one, this is not the military, so there is not that kind of hierarchy.
But still, you want the kid playing the video game, not the old guy.
So yes, this claw
sorry.
was abrasive and rudimentary, and it wasn't meant to gently retrieve an injured body. It was meant to just grab at something where there was very little consequence. So it was primitive and it wasn't the purpose. And the guy was afraid that if he used this claw, he could actually hurt and actually kill David.
He's
Or
alive right
Chris.
now.
Chris.
I don't want to be responsible for Yes. So while you're arguing and he has
He
no
didn't argue. He just said, I don't want to do
no
it.
oxygen.
He's got good boundaries.
No.
I don't want to kill someone. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, but if you're not doing something, you are killing him.
I don't know.
So they're like, he had no oxygen for 29 minutes and he came out of it basically unscathed.
Right. Chris, ultimately, they drug out after 30 minutes. So he had gone.
Well, 39 total.
Yeah. So 40 minutes without oxygen and under there for 50 because he had 10 minutes of oxygen.
Well, no, that was with the 10. It was 29.
So like I said, 30.
29
I said 30.
without plus 10.
Yeah,
so 39.
I said 30 initially. Anyway, 30 without oxygen.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, he comes out
Well-
and they think he's.
Well, I was specific about he was down there for 39 minutes with quote unquote 10 minutes of oxygen. There's a reason
me know
why.
when you're
There's
done.
a reason why I'm phrasing it that way, but continue.
Anyway, so when they get him out, they assume he's dead. He doesn't respond to CPR. And then he comes back and then he seems unresponsive, like, he might have suffered some brain damage. And then a little while later, then he says something. And then turns out he's okay. And then they have a plaque at the end of the movie saying experts can't definitively say why Chris didn't have any mental or physical repercussions from this.
I'm no expert,
That is correct.
but I've dabbled in the science before, and I think I might have some ideas here. Okay, so first of all, are you familiar with a gentleman by the name of Wim Hof?
Yes, of course.
Yes. Now, I suppose most of our listeners probably aren't.
So you'll tell him who he is.
Wim Hof is an expert breather. Which seems kind of how are you better at breathing? But he actually is.
He goes to cold climates and cold water and snow and yeah.
And he knows how to breathe like efficiently to the point that like
he could crawl into an iceberg and still breathe.
Yes. So for one, under the actually what would you do? If I was going to do a job like this, I might look up some of the crap he teaches and learn
Well, I don't know if it's crap.
and
works
learn
really well.
learn how to do it.
Yeah, that does seem like it would be a good part of the training.
So I'm going to assume here that Chris maybe had some training in this area. Like he just
Oh, if you're a diver doing that, yeah. But the character Duncan was always reminding the two divers, like, breathe slowly.
Yeah.
And he
Well-
was almost a coach to the divers, making sure that they were doing things right. And when Dave was trying to bring Chris up trying to basically scale this umbilical cord, pull himself up in the middle of the storm, getting bounced all around. He had to remind him, like, go with the flow, try to, go up when there's less tension and rest when there is tension. And he was a coach. But yeah, you're right. If they had more of those breathing skills going in, they would be better off.
I'm trying to think about this from the real world perspective, because this was based on real world events. Like they're telling me that he was under there for 39 minutes with 10 minutes worth of oxygen. Let me tell you that if you are underwater for 39...
Well, he had an apparatus over his head, so it wasn't like he was sucking in water that whole time.
Yeah. You're going to be dead, or your fiancé is going to wish that you were, because you're going to be a complete vegetable. But while scientists can't explain it, I think I might be able to a little bit. Or at least take a swing at it.
Okay.
Here. Number one, again, he probably knows some breathing techniques. So he knows how to essentially survive on less oxygen. Two, when they say 10 minutes of oxygen, I have to think that they're basically rating this as maybe not under the worst case scenarios, but probably close to the worst case scenarios. Like, he's got at least 10 minutes of oxygen. Like, we know he's got 10. He's safe at 10. After that, we don't know.
Right.
So they probably had a little more oxygen than that. He probably was a good breather. Plus, like, the water itself was just barely over freezing.
Yeah, it was 2 degrees.
And heavily pressurized. Okay. All of this is going to cause your organs and your system in general
work more slowly,
to just run more slowly.
Yeah.
Like the blood's not going to circulate as fast. And where you get screwed is when non-oxygenated blood goes to the brain. So if it's moving slower, then...
You don't think that was put into their assessment of 10 minutes, that their work was underwater?
Actually, I bet it's not. I bet it's just literally like, here's 10 minutes. Like, you're standing on land. You have this thing. You would have 10 minutes worth of oxygen. So I'm thinking that between the body getting significantly slower, him probably having some breathing techniques, it being very cold and everything.
Well, they did say that the temperature and what was the other variable? That they thought the temperature and
the pressure.
The pressure.
Pressure and the temperature probably did. I mean, it probably almost for sure did have an impact on it. But probably, again, like, if you breathe for 10 minutes and I breathe for 10 minutes and we were to actually measure how much oxygen each of us took in,
it would be different.
It would be different.
Right.
So on 10 minutes, you're kind of like an average, if you will. Like, you have about 10 minutes worth of oxygen. If he just somehow needs less or is able to use less, then that 10 minutes, even under normal circumstances, could have been 15 or 20.
Well, it's like when either there's a horror movie and someone has to hide, or there's a movie about someone going underground into caves, and they always say, breathe slower. Don't, even if something happens, you're upset, don't go because you're going to use up all the air. So yeah, I mean, you certainly have control over some of that. Now, considering the fact that both Diver 1 and Diver 2 had to be reminded frequently by Duncan to, hey, breathe. I don't know how accurate that was. But again, this is a fictionalized account of
it's a movie.
Events.
But yeah, no, I mean, if the system moving slower maybe basically meant that, like, base level, he needed, say, 30% less oxygen.
So it sounds, what I'm hearing from you is what would you do is if you were in charge of the training program for these divers.
Well, I'm more stating that I don't think he had 10 minutes worth of oxygen, because let me tell you, if you didn't have oxygen for 29 minutes, you're dead. Like, you're not brain dead, you're dead. He would have been limpless. There would have been nothing out of him by the time they even got to him. Like, there's just no freaking way. You just can't go that long.
Okay.
Period. I mean, you could maybe go 5 minutes, maybe, with just none. And honestly, probably not even that. But if you were somehow able to conserve the oxygen and there was a little bit more than you thought, and you used it a little bit less, then his 10 minutes of oxygen might have actually turned into more like 35 plus minutes of oxygen. I mean, yeah, he's going to be down there. He probably was smart and he realized, I just need to not move. I need to not move. I need to Like, don't expend any more oxygen than I absolutely freaking need to.
So if you were Chris, the guy who got trapped underwater, you would breathe very slowly.
Well, that's actually probably one of the big reasons, besides not wanting his unconscious body swept away by the tide, why he clamped himself to the top.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't want to have to physically exert to keep himself in that location. He knew that thing would hold him on, so he could just zen and chill. And
Well,
use
also too, they
very
shared a
little-
backstory about how Chris and Duncan had been sent to a site where there had been some sort of crash, and they had to go find the survivors.
Yeah.
And one had floated away and couldn't be found, and I'm sure it's because of that experience he knew very likely, especially in a storm, that he could be washed away and that his fiance would never have closure not having found the body. So
if that part is real, or I mean, that might be real, it might be fictionalized for the movie. I mean, again,
but I mean, it wasn't out of the blue that he did that. He had actually experienced the fact with the body.
yeah, it's just
floating
interesting in this
away.
case because I mean, they are telling us factually that he was basically from the time his umbilical cord got snapped to the time that he got pulled back into the bell, that was 39 minutes.
Okay, so back to what would you do, which is what we do here. I have to say the one thing I was confused about, whereas if I was the engineer working on this equipment, those umbilical cords, I did not understand why they did not have a crank on them where you could bring somebody in, because that was hugely problematic in the fact when Dave was having to save Chris and pull himself up the umbilical cord, like if you had a rope hanging in your gym and you're in 10th grade and you have to climb the rope up to, pull your own weight up the rope. It was the same thing with the umbilical cord, but which he struggled with earlier in the film, but then he had to pull up himself and the dead weight of Chris.
So
and I'm thinking about, like, why isn't there a crank to bring in this umbilical cord?
So I'm guessing it's because of kinking in the cord. Like if you tried to crank it and put it all together like that, you would kink the cord and crush it, and which on a rope, no big deal.
Or even Duncan, like, why wasn't Duncan pulling the cord to try and help them up? Like, I didn't understand why it was exclusively on them to pull themselves up this cord in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah. Now, what might have been nice is if they'd had basically a rope that ran alongside the umbilical cord, and you could use the rope on a crank and crank that up.
Yeah.
I mean,
If I was in charge there, what would you do? I would have some sort of backup system that allowed you to bring in a diver, because if they had that, they would have had a better chance of getting Chris pulled in before everything went awry, and they certainly could have assisted Dave when he was trying to bring Chris's dead weight body back up into the bell.
yeah, I mean, it does kind of feel like maybe Duncan could have just literally grabbed the umbilical cord and started pulling.
Yeah, and he was just kind of sitting there.
But maybe, again, I have to think there's got to be a reason. Maybe just because there's not enough room in the bell, like you just can't get enough,
It seems like you need,
or you couldn't do it safely.
for that kind of work, it just seems like you got to have a fail safe. When something goes wrong, you have to have a plan B, and it didn't seem like there was any plan B baked into that equipment.
Well, I mean, the 10 minutes of oxygen is a plan B.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, it's probably more like a plan B fucked, but
Yeah. But yeah, as far as a basic what would you do, I would never take this job. And number two, I gotta say, so Chris survived this horrible ordeal. He goes back home, back to his fiance. I almost died, and she's already scared of the work he does. And then 3 weeks later, we find out in all the writing at the end of the film that, Chris and the team went back out to finish the job.
okay.
What the heck?
Okay, so I've thought about this a little bit here. For one, if I'm the fiance, I'm like, hell no, you're done. You're done in this profession. That said, if there could be some assurances that, hey, we're going to do this under better conditions, like no storm, we're going to make sure that all the outside factors are taken care of, and I need to do this to put this to bed,
And we don't
and
know.
I'm never going to do it again.
Yeah, and we don't know what happened after that. If they just went back to finish the job, or if he went on to have another 15-year career doing that, or what. So that might require a little bit of research. But
If I'd been the fiance, I could have been okay with the, hey, listen, I get it. You need to finish this job to I mean, as a girl who likes closure, I think you understand that
Sure.
maybe he needed closure. I'm actually going to research this to see if he did continue or if this was just like, no, I need to finish
I'd be okay not
this
having
job.
closure, though. I'm big on closure, as you well know, but when it comes to almost dying, I don't need closure.
But I'm not so sure that he. I mean, I know he cared, but like, there's those people who
They're adventure junkies.
yeah, they will.
adrenaline junkies.
But if you're the fiance, you're like, okay, listen, I'll let you finish this one, as long as they promise to take ridiculously good care of you. But you're done after this. If you want to get married, we're done, because I'm not going through this shit again.
Yeah,
Not happening.
it's extremely dangerous work, and when your loved one goes off to do that, it's, you know, similar to that of firefighters or police officers, where it's dangerous work and there's always a chance they might not come back home, or at least come back home in the same shape that they left.
Yeah, this is why I've spent most of my life as like a game store owner or a dog walker or a stock trader. Like heavily, heavily dangerous professions where
They mostly involve sitting down
I could trip.
or mild walking.
I could trip and maybe skin my knee. Maybe. And that'd be a horrific injury. So,
Yeah.
No.
So I guess, I don't know, the takeaway here is obviously the movie is called Last Breath. And actually, as you brought up Wim Hof, just having actually a command of your breathing is an all-around good skill. And I know there's a lot of people that feel like that sounds woo-woo. And I've certainly been at that point in my life, like, oh, you're going to talk about breath work? Oh, that's so woo-woo. But
breathing
it's
is
actually good for you.
Breathing is not woo-woo.
And knowing how to control your breathing and knowing what kind of breathing to use in what circumstances, it might seem like, well, duh, who doesn't know about that? But there is an art to utilizing your lungs and your body and being able to have that awareness to command that behavior when you need to. And that was certainly very pivotal in this kind of work.
Yeah, it actually makes me want to go over his stuff again and see if maybe I can hold my breath a little longer.
Yeah, you only have to basically get naked in ice water. It's not too hard.
Yeah, sure. Like, pencil me in for Tuesday.
We hope you enjoyed our episode. Thank you for listening. And to catch all the new episodes, please subscribe. We release 2 to 3 episodes weekly, so we'll have new content regularly. Until next time.